It's hard to imagine what conclaves must have been like before the era of 24-hour news media, and especially before this digital age where news or misinformation can travel the globe in seconds. It used to take days, weeks, maybe years for news of a pope to reach the far corners of the globe. So how has the church been doing in this new digital age? To ask that, we've got today Bill Steinberg from the Archdiocese of Toronto and our own Alicia Ambrosio, who has been covering the conclave. Bill, you've been in the media a lot. What kind of questions have you been getting from these different news outlets?
Well, I mean, everything from the misinformed and ignorant to very well thought out questions. I mean, last week somebody asked what we would call the person wearing purple at the front of the altar.
Oh, okay.
And at the other end, you've got people asking like really thoughtful questions about the character of the Pope or the process involved. So it really does vary. The one thing for sure, I mean, there's only one news outlet that I'm aware of in Canada right now that actually has a religion beat reporter.
And who's that?
That's the Post.
Okay.
Otherwise, they're relying on general reporters often, or someone who may have a little bit of background.
Certainly, I've seen here in Toronto a lot of Catholics who understand the conclave are getting called upon to speak in the media, like both of you. And Alicia, you've appeared a lot on CTV. What kind of questions have you been getting?
I'm getting kind of a range of questions. So some outlets really just want the information. How does this process work? Because the conclave is still something that we have to be realistic. It is a process that came out of a papal court of times gone by, days gone by. So this process doesn't exist in any other institution right now, and there's this mystery about it. There's other questions that are definitely controversy seeking. I've been asked to my face, how do you reconcile your faith with the fact that your church discriminates against women?
And how do you respond to that kind of question?
I turned around and said I'm a woman, and I've been working in the church or around the church all my life, and I've never once felt discriminated against by my church. Now, we as Christians sometimes don't treat each other as we should, but that's a separate story. The hierarchy itself, I've never felt discriminated by it. And just a lot of curiosity. I think it's interesting what you say, that there is only one media outlet in Canada with a religion beat reporter. In Europe, it is standard practice still to have a religion reporter, more specifically a Vatican reporter. So there's a certain level of awareness. And what we have been seeing in Rome, I've been told by friends who are reporters in Rome, they're seeing an influx of reporters from North America coming in who have absolutely no background in covering the Catholic Church. And they're going to the kind of core Vatican reporters and asking, what does this mean? What's that? Who's that? Why is he doing that?
Well, even for myself, having worked in Catholic media for a number of years, I've never worked in Catholic media during a conclave, so all of this is new to me, and so I wonder how difficult it must be for people who this isn't their beat to be able to understand this. Bill, what do you account for this fascination in the minutiae of the conclave? People are wondering little details about how the smokestack works, where cardinals are going to be sitting. Why are they interested in all this stuff?
It's the tradition. It seems so foreign to what we live in our day-to-day lives, and it's steeped in history and tradition, and that's something that I think people, whether they want to admit it or not, they really value it. Understanding why something's been carried on for 2,000 years, or understanding what caused it to actually go this way, is fascinating. And the fact that we as a faith community still cherish that in itself is fascinating, and it's almost like craftsmanship. People still do really admire craftsmanship when they see it, because otherwise we live in an IKEA society, and we throw things out when they're done.
Particularly in the weeks before the conclave, though, we saw a lot of coverage, people asking yourselves whether the church is going to change some of its more controversial positions. Was it frustrating that you were getting these questions again and again, say about women's ordination?
It was frustrating. It was refreshing when I finally got to the point where producers were telling me, oh, we've done that question to death.
Okay.
But I think what we need to understand is if we're getting these questions, it means we're not doing a good job of communicating why these things are not going to change and why these things could change. There's no understanding of what doctrine is because everybody's used to changing depending on what the social norms are. People adapt themselves to what the world around them says is normal. So the fact that the church as an institution doesn't, nobody understands why. We need to communicate that better.
We did a recent episode of Perspectives on that very topic about what can change and what can't. So hopefully we can get that message out there.
Those questions come from a very North American-centric society. And so I really did take an opportunity to suggest that that may not be a priority when in other places people are being shot for going to pray.
Exactly.
Or churches are being bombed while a mass is going on. I mean, I can't imagine that some of the trivial questions that come up have any relevance to people in those areas.
Yeah, and I like someone has to just say it straight out. It doesn't work that way. I think one of the best answers I saw was Archbishop Michael Miller of Vancouver telling a reporter who asked him about women's ordination and gay marriage. Michael Miller saying, "Yeah, it doesn't work that way. The Pope doesn't get to change things based on his personal opinion." So that's another part of what we need to communicate.
Now, do you think that because of this fascination on the minutiae, because of all these questions about controversial issues, that maybe the media has been missing in action on some other important aspects of the papal transition in the conclave?
I think that we have an opportunity to if not evangelize, at least demonstrate the joy that really emanates from the church. And I think that the final audience was a good example of that. 140,000 people, signs in 5, 6, 7 languages offering thanks, and then a hush when the Holy Father wanted to speak. Yeah. That in itself, we can use those opportunities. We're being given the opportunity, and it's ours to take and shape.
I want to ask you both how well you think the church has been doing in communicating its message. So I'll be back with you in just a moment.
Let us know your perspective. Email us at perspectives@saltandlighttv.org or reach us by mail, Perspectives at Salt and Light Television, 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1. Or call us toll-free at 1-888-302-7181. Let your perspective be heard.
On Sunday, March 10, 2012, 2 days before the conclave that will elect the next pope, Cardinal Donald Wuerl of Washington spoke to journalists outside the Rome Church where he serves as honorary pastor. Cardinal Wuerl thanked the journalists for helping Catholics around the world follow the events that will culminate in the papal election.
Because of your presence, people back home can see what's going on, can follow, can be a part of this historic moment. We're here this morning so we can pray. We can pray for all the cardinal electors who are gathering as of Tuesday morning to begin the conclave.
Also over the weekend, journalists got a peek inside the Sistine Chapel, still being prepared for the cardinals, with plywood tables where they'll sit and vote, and a level floor to reduce the possibility of them tripping. 2 stoves have been set up, one for burning ballots after every round of voting, and the other to produce smoke signals to let people on the outside know what's happened. Black smoke to indicate an inconclusive round of voting, and white smoke to tell the world that a new pope has been elected. When they're not inside the Sistine Chapel, the cardinals will be in the Domus Santa Marta, a special hotel in the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica, where they'll be cut off from the outside world for the duration of the election. The Domus has a special suite set aside for the new pope, where he'll live for the first weeks of his pontificate, while the papal apartments in the Apostolic Palace are being prepared for him. The secrecy surrounding a conclave may seem to clash with the pressure for transparency and immediate access in today's media culture. But as the Vatican's in-house conclave expert explained to me, a process that protects the confidentiality of voting also works to ensure the legitimacy of the result.
Il fatto di mantenere il segreto, io credo sia una forte difesa per la libertà dei votanti. I cardinali devono rispondere soprattutto alla loro coscienza davanti a Dio.
back in studio with Bill Steinberg, spokesperson for the Archdiocese of Toronto, and our own Alicia Ambrosio, who has been covering the conclave. In the past, it seems that maybe the Church treated the media as perhaps a bit of an annoyance, something that had to be grappled with, but didn't necessarily invite media coverage. I don't know if that's fair to say. How do you think we've been doing in terms of communicating our message?
I think we're getting better.
Okay.
I think that now, I mean, these are tools.
Yeah.
Twitter is a tool,
Mm-hmm.
and we're using it.
Yes.
Facebook is a tool. Social networking, social media is a tool, as is broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, well, Salt and Light is a fine example of how we are doing better and better.
And how, in your particular work with the Archdiocese, how have you been using Twitter and Facebook and other social media to get your message out there?
In events like this, I mean, we have one of my colleagues is in Rome, and I'm sure that there's been 25 to 30 tweets today.
Okay.
In an era of citizen journalism, we can be the citizens as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And so as a diocese, we almost have an obligation. We have an obligation to be where people are, and we do have a lot of followers. We do, whether it's on the website or through the Facebook page, I mean, they're our audience.
Globally, what has the Vatican been doing? Tell us about what's been going on at the Holy See Press Office, Alicia.
The Vatican has always had a core group of accredited journalists, and it takes a while to kind of get into that core group. But once the Vatican knows that you are a trustworthy reporter, you have access to information. So there's always been a certain openness on the part of the Vatican towards the media. What they're dealing with now, and what I'm seeing in the tone of the releases, they're dealing with this influx of media, and they're new. Like, the media they're dealing with are new. They're dealing with North American media that have no background in dealing with the Church. They're dealing with foreign media that for whom the Church is something exotic and foreign. And so they're doing something very ingenious of having these daily briefings available in 3 languages. That's really the first time I've seen an openness of that level to the media. There are usually translated briefings at certain very specific Vatican events. Otherwise, it's you either understand Italian or you sing.
Don't. Yes.
Exactly. You have to remember, we've got now at Pontifex, which is kind of suspended, but it's the papal Twitter account. We have the Terza Loggia, which is a Secretariat of State's Twitter feed.
And that hasn't started tweeting yet, is that right?
It has.
Oh, it has. Okay.
It has. The papal smokestack has started tweeting.
I believe that might be unofficial, right?
I have a suspicion it might be unofficial, but it's probably someone in the neighborhood.
Well, we'll wait to see if that becomes a verified account.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then we've also got news.va. So there's this one-stop source of information for everything you need. Just everything from today they posted about how the media is covering this, the ritual surrounding the conclave, the masses that the cardinals did at the titular churches over the weekend preceding the opening of the conclave. So there is an unprecedented openness to we've got to reach people wherever they are. And remember that Pope Benedict was very big on this. He said, the digital space is the new agora. It's the new public space where people are interacting. It might not be the best place to have an in-depth conversation, but it's a start.
And even for someone who we know he wasn't particularly tech savvy personally, he still ushered the Church into this era. A lot of these resources that you mentioned are things that we didn't have back in 2005. That said, there was a media blackout that the Cardinals voted upon. We stopped seeing the daily press briefings that were occurring with the American Cardinals over at the Pontifical North American College. Was this a missed opportunity, do you think?
I do agree with Sister Mary Walsh on that one, with the U.S. Conference of Bishops, that there was an opportunity because the information was still getting out. And that's the thing, is that if, in fact, everybody was honoring the spirit of that, then the Italian papers wouldn't have had verbatim reports from those meetings. And I think that that changes everything, because what could have been an opportunity for the cardinals to speak very frankly about the challenges that they face, and very frankly about the person they feel the next Holy Father should be,
Yeah.
they all of a sudden had to question it because the person next to them may have been the person who gave the information to the press.
That hits on something else, that when we're covering the Vatican and when we're covering a conclave, we're really looking at two different cultures.
Yes.
We're approaching it from this North American culture where we are used to daily briefings and we are used to getting information. We're used to people coming out of a closed door meeting and not giving us the details, but helping us understand the atmosphere, the general tone of the discussions, where conversation is headed. The Vatican is a completely different culture, and it's almost built on this. You have to think. People living and working in the Vatican, this is all they've got. In many cases, they're prelates. They've devoted their lives to the church. Many are living far away from their families. Many don't even have a regular parish to be ministering in. So what goes on inside the Vatican walls is everything for them. And so you see all of this stuff develop around it, and you see these intrigues, and you see them make friends with journalists because they have no other outlet to vent. So covering the Vatican in Italy, and I'm speaking specifically about Italian Vaticanists, they pretty much built their trade on making friends with the right people who are willing to talk, who are frustrated enough to talk, who simply don't see why certain things have to be kept secret, and getting information from these places. What I saw when we heard about the ban on the briefings was really a clash of cultures. So you had one group of cardinals from one culture, perhaps fearful that the North American cardinals were going to get the upper hand in a way, or were going to influence the direction of this conclave just by being open and honest. Exactly, imagine that. Maybe people will actually want one of them as Pope instead of this other person we had in mind.
Well, certainly the cultures are very different, and even in the media, different kind of standards maybe between North American media and Italian media. But because of the massive interest in the conclave, we're seeing certain news in the Italian media that maybe would have not been translated back into English. Well, now English media is reporting, well, this is what the Italian papers are talking about. And often these involve leaks, unsourced reports. What would you both advise to Catholics at home who are hearing some very strange stuff coming out of the Italian press?
Oh.
You know, I think that people have a sense of their church. And I mean, some of that is just going to be, it's just distraction. Really, we should trust in the men who are there, the cardinals of our church, and recognize that we are not part of it, and nor is the media. There's been 128, presentations in the general congregations as so far. I mean, they're the only ones who've heard all of those, and so I think that we can get caught up in distraction.
Well, this is all the time that we have, and we always want to give, there's a lot more to talk about, but we always want to give the last word to the Word of God. And so we have a passage from the Gospel of Mark. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to the whole of creation." Your final thoughts, Alicia?
In the context of what we've been discussing, that just makes me think of how every time we get called to give an interview to a television or a radio or a newspaper, we're dealing with someone who may have never heard of our church, who may have never heard of Christ, who may have never heard of some of the words we use. And if we can make even one aspect, one word, one piece of terminology understandable in that brief encounter we have, we are proclaiming the word to the rest of the world in a way that we may have never imagined we would be.
Incredible opportunity. Bill?
I'm conscious hearing that we're actually speaking to the larger church when we do speak through the media. That we're actually speaking to their audience, and they're the people who are beside us in the pews, whether that's just in spirit or physically. And this is an ideal time for us to really live up to that command.
Well, thank you so much. Bill Steinberg from the Archdiocese of Toronto, our own Alicia Ambrosio, for sharing your perspective with us. And for our viewers at home, we always want to hear your perspective too, and the best way to do that is by going to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/saltandlighttv. And for all our coverage of the papal transition and conclave, go to saltandlighttv.org. From all of us here at Salt and Light, thanks for watching, and remember to pray for the cardinals.